how does any member bring a proposed policy change to the society now in the absence of a House of Delegates? And the answer is that anyone can bring anything to the board of directors. We think that the processes will evolve. Probably it would help to have a special society or a component local medical society behind a resolution for not, it doesn't be a resolution, it could be a member, it could be a letter, it could be a phone call. But to get something in front of the board that's important to people. We recently had an issue that came from this area that was generated from Wilmington by a member and an executive of a medical organization, and it resulted in 4 hours of debate among the board, both on phone calls and in person. But that's the sort of activity that we believe the governance modernization can accomplish, and that is anybody who wants to affect changes in the medical society can speak up and get something before the board of directors for action. Some of these things may be referred to a committee of the medical society. Some may be dealt with by the board itself. But the idea is that everyone is enfranchised to bring issues to the board. How does one get rid of a rogue board member or a slate of board members? There is a provision in the bylaws for a referendum. If 10% of the voting membership sign a petition, any issue can get on the ballot for a referendum, including something that the board may not have wanted to take up, may not have wanted to pass, or a removal of an officer or a board of directors member. This is not a low bar, it's a high bar to get, let's see here, what was it? I forgot what the number is, Steve. 5% or 10% for the referendum.
I believe it's 5%, which would be about 600 people.
Okay, so all right. I think that's right too, but it's the idea being that the bar should be high enough that if it's important enough, you should be able to get a couple of component societies and a specialty society to hop in, which would give you your numbers immediately, but would also be high enough to keep, frankly, wacko proposals from making it onto the election ballot. And it's a line to walk. And we picked a number. We talked about it a lot and picked a number that we thought would be if two major component societies wanted to do something, then they could get it on the ballot. And we would hope that the board would not be stupid enough to actually not consider something that was that important to that many people. But anyway, there needs to be a mechanism to protect the membership against a bad board.
10% is the quorum requirement.
Okay. So that's a bunch of people, around 1,000 people.
1,200 people voting in the election. The result controls. Yeah.
But to get it on the ballot though, that's
get it on the ballot. I believe it's 5. Let me look.
I think it's 5%.
That number is not as it as it were.
Okay. So anyway, so this is where we are right now. That's the rationale for this. I'm happy to. Petition of 5% of voting members can create a referendum question. I had it written down here. I just couldn't see it. Couldn't read my own handwriting. So I will pause there. Daryl thought that this might engender some questions, and my trusty color commentator, the General Counsel and Vice President Steve Keene, will be happy to opine. Dr. Moulton is sitting next to him and will undoubtedly do this when it's time for him to, we're kidding.
He's right, I will.
So the floor is open for questions. By the way, how many of you have been a delegate to the House of Delegates in the past? Okay, so probably a majority of people in the room. And I would be curious as to your reflections on the relative efficacy of the governance process, as well as your opinions about what we're trying to do here.
One thing that we've done is we've got this being recorded so that people couldn't be here if they wanted information about it to make informed decisions to have that. So it's never go to a microphone, folks always say, well, you can hear me, I don't need to have a microphone, but it just will not be on the video, and it's a real pain to watch a thing and you hear an explanation to a question, you don't know what the question is. So be sure and jump to the mic, or we can carry it around or whatnot with questions. And I'm just real eager to hear what thoughts people have that have a lot of experience with the medical society, or there are people that have issues that have been brought forth that really did make a difference. I think one of the salient resolutions in recent memory was the insurance paying for breast reconstruction for breast cancer patients. You know, there was a time when insurance-wise that got thrown into the cosmetic arena, and it was a local bunch that took that before, and it really ended up making a difference in how people are seen and how their problems paid for. So, but I'm really eager to hear what people have to say or what questions they might have for our delegates. I think of this almost like a point in time where we're like the founding fathers, and we got a good bunch of people now, but what happens 20 years when it's another bunch of people, and you want to put controls in to make that work?
Exactly. Now, we'll point out that the Constitution is very difficult to change. The bylaws are much easier to change, and they can be changed by the membership in a single election. You know, the Constitution has to be right. The bylaws, we can sand off the rough edges over time, and I'm sure that there are things. And by the way, you know, we took the bylaws and changed as little as possible, but we found some stuff in the old bylaws that just didn't make any sense. So we actually made some improvements there as well. So, and also the other thing, and Darrell mentioned this as well, so the Board of Directors is meeting Saturday. One of the agenda items is for us to advance the final version of the bylaws proposal to the House for consideration. So the timing of this meeting, I guess, was a week early, so that if you have comments, you don't have to tell me tonight, but if you go to the website and put your comments into the web forum, we monitor this. Kristen Shepard monitors it every day and sends out when there are comments posted. So some of them have, in fact, we've made 2 changes to what's posted there already based on the comments, as I mentioned. So please feel free to chime in either here or electronically. Yes, sir.
Is there a trend, is there a national trend for this change?
Question was, is there a national trend for this change?
We are not the first society to sunset its House of Delegates, if that's what the society decides to do. I don't know how many of them. Do you recall, Steve?
It's a relatively small number, but there are other states that have done that.
And there are some states that have much more robust annual meetings than we do. Typically, the smaller states where the travel time is not such an issue as being halfway to the Mississippi River like we are. And I'm told also that people are watching very carefully what North Carolina does and how we handle this. If that's a terrible answer to your question, but that's all I got.
Hi, I'm Mike Nichols. I'm the assistant treasurer on our local medical board here. I've been a delegate for 2 or 3 years now. And I had a few questions. And one is, as far as the representation on the board, have you considered, and forgive me if you already said this, but having regional representation?
There are regional, so the board is comprised of, there are 4 regions. There's a regional representative from the 4 regions. There are also at-large members. Under the proposal, the at-large members would increase by 2 because the ex officio membership of the vice speaker and speaker would go away.
Okay.
So there's
we
a
would
combination
have like
of,
a southeast representative who we could possibly know and get in touch with easily.
right, that would be Paul Cunningham.
Okay. A thought I had, you were using the analogy of a public company, and one difference from a public company is that when you buy a stock, you can watch your stock every day and see what's happening to it. And my concern here is that people sell, And so you've got a board where you feel like you have no voice, and people just say, well, I'm out, I'm not interested in this. And so that was just a concern.
Well, because I'm intrigued by this.
Excuse
So,
me?
I mean, I'm intrigued by this notion
Yeah.
that you don't have a voice, when in fact the whole purpose of this is to increase your voice. So that every member is enfranchised to vote, every member is enfranchised to interact with the board of directors.
Will we vote on resolutions?
Would you vote on resolutions?
Yeah.
No. You would interact with the board and bring your resolutions to the board, just as you bring your resolutions to the House of Delegates. You have one vote in the House of Delegates. I would encourage you then to interact with your regional board representative to make sure that he votes the way that you vote. But, I'm going to get back, though, to the if you look back, and you can do this on the website, look back at the resolutions that have been proposed over the last decade. It's hard to imagine one. I can't really think of one that has resulted in a significant policy change that has benefited the membership, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was, young in the 80s and 90s, I used to, write them like hotcakes. I'm the guy that, we have a seatbelt policy because of me.
Mm-hmm.
We have a drunk driving policy because of me. We've got all sorts of, public health stuff because of stuff that I wrote and rammed it through the reference committees. It empowers the legislative guys to show up at a hearing when the motorcycle guys are trying to repeal the helmet law. Well, we have policy that we support motorcycle helmets. And they do this. They show up at hearings when these issues come up. And I'm sure that, and by the way, the board reviews the policies already every year and then sends recommendations to the House to rescind or to reaffirm. The board will continue to do that with the policies. But the issue of representation, the goal here is to increase interaction with every member rather than just a select few delegates.
Okay. I think the fear that we've talked about before tonight is just that there's some board that makes it up there maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that's really far to one side. And I would use the analogy like in Wake County, maybe this is too political, but of like the school boards, and it may swing way to the right or way to the left, and they start making policies that a lot of people very much disagree with. I think the concern is, what is the mechanism there to put a stop to that? And then a follow-up question of that is, what stops this board that now has kind of, I think, more power from passing resolutions in itself that strengthens itself and gives itself even more power going forward?
What do you think the power is?
The
Define
power
for me.
to eliminate term limits, for example.
Well,
Such
that's
that
a,
they
that's a
can.
bylaws change, has to be voted on by the membership.
Okay.
I mean,
But, that's one example, but I guess these
Yeah.
are just, it's, just, I think, concerns from such a big change. And I think just like you could argue that my one vote here on a national level means nothing, but there's something about having that vote and feeling like I'm able to give my 2 cents, maybe feels a little bit like that's being diminished. And so I think that's the
well, not only
concern.
will you have the vote under this system, but the other 11,900 people who don't have a vote will have a vote.
Okay. Good.
As a follow-up on that, when you talk about having a vote, if it's not a referendum or whatever the class of decision would be voted upon that requires, 600 people and then a quorum of 1,200 people, there were other things that did not require a quorum, I think, if I saw. And I remember someone, maybe it was you, that had voiced the comment that some people had said, hey, what would keep a specialty society from really having a busload of people over here with their pet agenda? Whether it was good for everybody or not, might be good for everybody, but whether it was or not, what would help a real organized big group from being able to push something through real easily where someone else says, I don't think that's a good idea, and then they've got to go out on their own and drum up a bunch of interest, as opposed to having well, hey, we need to have this discussion at the House of Delegates or at whatever other instrument would replace it. I think perhaps what you're talking about is having, there's something about having a distinct, here's a vote time beyond just officers only, perhaps. Is that addressed?
Well, we discussed this at great length. And made a decision that, the observation is democracy is messy. And that any voting bloc under any democratic system can sway a question one way or the other. And it is a risk. Now, having said that, and I think about what the current situation is, there's really no difference now. A special society can pack the House of Delegates. We have 280 seated spots, and we have 100 people that show up. It wouldn't be far-fetched for that to actually occur and create all sorts of havoc. There are some local societies in this state who are very activist and in my view, have some very disruptive, in a destructive way, ideas about some things. So it would behoove the board when these issues come up, either by referendum or presented to the board. And listen, a lot of this just boils down to communication. In the ideal world, we would actually have some issues that people care about and would participate in a discussion about. Raising issues among ourselves is not a bad thing, and we already have a handful of very, very, very divisive issues among various specialties. The board, it's a third rail. Going one way or the other will disenfranchise a part of the society that we really can't do. So in some ways, that sort of Solomonic attempt is very, very, very difficult. But I think this is going to happen, Darrell. I really do believe that the society, as things change and things get tougher for physicians, we're going to be presented with some problems that are potentially very divisive. So far the House of Delegates, in my view, has not been an ideal way to deal with those. What happens is that people line up at the microphones. You've all been there, microphone 1, microphone 2, microphone 3. Finally, somebody gets sick of it and sends up and says, I move to vote immediately. And then they vote. And what happens to that vote varies. Or somebody might hop up and say, I'd like to move to send to the board for study, or file. So parliamentary machinations go on, and the issue gets dealt with or not. Yeah. The idea behind the board is the board is accountable for dealing with these issues and should communicate to the membership how it dealt with them. I think, if anything, the board has been guilty of not communicating adequately, and that's going to be a linchpin for the success or failure of this system.
If I may, I'd like to honestly ask everybody in the room, how many of you have gone to the state website and used it this year? 2, 3, 4, 5. You see, I was on the computer till 12 o'clock last night, and I'm so tied up with doing emails about patient care that at 12 o'clock, I don't much care about what goes in the medical society. And so this is really hard to hear one person, one vote. This was the highlight of my medical society year to go to the state convention. And it wasn't just about going to the committees, it was a chance to enjoy collegiality among my other physicians. And I realize that that's probably diminuted now and with all the pressures we're under. And I realize that cost is probably a major issue here. I don't know what the cost to the medical society is to go to the state convention. I'm not worried about the election of the board. I think there's room for nepotism there, and where the board kind of feeds itself as to who gets elected, but I'm not so worried about that. I am concerned, and maybe I'm not as disciplined as everybody else in the room, but I am concerned that this is a culture destroyed, and it feels very much like a death knell. And so I just wanted to say that to you guys. Thank you.
If I can respond to, and what we've heard from, so a survey was done, a general survey with several announcements, and there were 750 respondents, which is twice the number of respondents we've ever had for any other survey. And the results of the survey, and you know, I believe they're also on the website. We'll be happy to send them to you. One of the things that came through loud and clear is that people really liked the idea of an annual meeting. And the task force liked the idea of an annual meeting. There are 165-year-old institutions that we would like to continue. There are ceremonial aspects. There's a recognition of past presidents. There are specialty societies that meet. There are sections that meet. There's the PAC breakfast. There's the young physicians who meet. There's, you know, and so it puts an onus on the membership committee, and they've been working on this very hard to make sure that they have a robust annual meeting. The 2016 meeting is being planned in conjunction with the Medical Group Managers Association. So, you know, we've heard from other members that this is not how I get my CME. Don't bother me with, you know, pain lectures and this and that. But we've also heard from others that, hey, you know, if the orthopedic surgeons decided to have a lecture on stuff that was pertinent to me as an internist or an emergency physician, I would love to go to that and to create some intermixture among the specialties. So I think, you know, like you, people want to preserve the ceremonial aspects of the annual meeting without the appearance that there is governance taking place.
Does it bother you that